This tutorial is for section S26. Write an equation for a parallel or perpendicular line for Algebra 1. Number 1. The equation of line V is y equals 1/10 x minus 4. Line W, which is parallel to line V, includes the point 8, -1. What is the equation of line W? In order to solve this, we'll need to use point-slope form, and then we'll plug in the information for this point. Alright, the one thing that we do know about the slope is that these lines are parallel. So when we're rewriting our point-slope form for our second line, we'll copy down our 1/10. This y and this x stay the same. Then we'll plug in our x and our y coordinates from this ordered pair. So -8 and then minus a 1 here would be two negatives make a positive, so it would be +1. So how we got y plus 1 equals 1/10 x minus 8 is that we used our point slope form. Since it's a parallel line, we plugged in the same slope. Then we used our x value and our y value. So now that we plug this in, we just solve and simplify this equation until we get down to a y equals kind of like mx plus b sort of form. So slope-intercept form here. So the first thing I can do is use the distributive property. So 1/10 times x is 1/10 x. 1/10 times -8 is -8/10. So if you need to remember how to work fractions, remember that this is understood to be over 1. So you multiply your numerators. 1 times -8 is -8. You multiply your denominators. 10 times understood to be over 1. So 10 times 1 is 10. So I just cleaned up the right side using the distributive property. Now I have y plus 1 equals 1/10 x minus 8/10. So we need to subtract 1 from both sides. We can easily say -1 here, but since we have a fraction, what we'll have to subtract is a fraction with the same denominator. So 1, to get 1, we always put a number over itself, right? To match the denominator, we'll need 10 in the denominator, and then the numerator would also be 10 to give us a 1. So to get rid of this one here, we would subtract 10/10, and I wrote it in lightly so you could see how I got from this step to this. So now that we have a common denominator, all we're worried with is the numerator. So -8 minus 10 is going to give you -18, and the denominator is the same, so -18/10. So now that I've done this, I can also simplify this because these are both divisible by 2. So 2 goes into 18 9 times, 2 goes into 10 5 times. So my final answer here is y equals 1/10 x minus 9/5. So again, we should notice that that slope is the same because it was parallel. We plugged in our x and our y value into point slope form. We solved. We had to dust off our brain cells for fractions to be able to do that. We simplified any fractions that we needed to, and then now we have an equation for a line in slope-intercept form, just like we were given here. Alright, let's look at a few more examples. Number 2, line Q is y equals 7/5 x plus 8. Line R is perpendicular, not parallel, so perpendicular, and it passes through a point 10, -6. So now we're going to rewrite our point slope form, but this time instead of copying the slope, because this last one was parallel, this one is perpendicular. So we'll have to swap our numerator and denominator and change the sign. So -5/7 is going to be our new slope. We'll also use our x and our y value here, plug in our x and our y value here, and now we've rewritten our equation for the line in point slope form. We're going to clean it up, and then our final answer will be in slope-intercept form. So just like above, we're going to use our distributive property here. So -5/7 x plus, and then -5 times -10 was +50/7. After that, we're going to subtract 6 from both sides, but we have to put 6 in a fraction with 7 as the denominator. So 42 divided by 7 is 6, so we'll subtract 42 sevenths from 50 sevenths. So once we do that, we have 8 sevenths, and we kept our slope. We just brought that down every time. So now our final answer here is y equals negative 5 sevenths x plus 8 sevenths. Number 3. Line F is y equals negative 1/6 x plus 6. Line G is perpendicular, passes through the point 2, 9. So first we'll adjust our slope to reflect that this line is perpendicular. So the opposite of negative 1 over 6 is positive 6 over 1, or we could just write that as 6, right? We'll use our x value and subtract it from x, our y value and subtract it from y. So now that we have all of the parts of this equation in point slope form filled in, we just start simplifying. So we'll use our distributive property. 6 times x is 6x. 6 times negative 2 is negative 12. We like this one a lot because you don't have to think about fractions. We'll just add 9 to both sides. That leaves us with y equals 6x minus 3. So that's our final answer here. And number 4, line U, the equation for that line is y equals negative 1/5 x plus 2. Line V is parallel, so we're back to this like our first example, and passes through the point 9, negative 2. So if it's parallel, we'll copy that slope. We'll subtract our x value from x. We'll subtract our y value from y. Since we're subtracting a negative, I can just write it as a positive because 2 negatives make a positive. I'll use my distributive property to clean this up a bit. And once again, they gave us some fractions, but that's okay. So negative 1/5 times x is negative 1/5 x. Negative 1/5 times negative 9 is positive 9/5. We need to subtract 2 from both sides. To get 2 with 5 as a denominator, 10 divided by 5 would give you 2, so we can subtract 10/5, which would leave us with negative 1/5. So our final answer here is y equals negative 1/5 x minus 1/5. And that's it.